this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary, and you are listening and watching the You Should Know podcast. We have Bruce Morton on today, and we're going to be talking about AI and skills-based hiring. And we've got a bunch of fun takes, so I can't wait to get into Bruce's mind and kind of explore a little bit. Bruce, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And firstly, thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Hmm.
So, Bruce Morton, originally from Birmingham in the UK, for those folks that spot the
P-
accent, now
the
living in
Peaky Blinders,
California.
the Peaky Blinders fans of the world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, subtitles. Um, so, I tripped into the industry 45 years ago and loved every minute ever since. So, I'm in my 45th year in the industry. Moved
Wow.
to the US via Asia 14 years ago. And my job at Allegis as global head of strategy is to try and see around the corner, predict
Right.
the future, and then build the services to deliver on our promises to our clients. So that's my
Where
job.
in Asia? Where in Asia were you?
I spent time in Hong Kong and then I was in Australia for a few years.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Wonderful.
Very nice.
What, Bruce? I kick off with a quick question here. What happens if you're wrong
What do
predicting the
you
future?
mean? What do you mean? What if?
I mean, is this like the Hall of Fame? Like you go 1 for 10, you're in the Hall of Fame, or what's the deal with this?
I think it's about having enough irons in the fire that some of them are right.
100%. No, it's Nostradamus
And
101.
having a two-way strategy, like the door opens on both ways. So you
Right.
can get in, but you can get
Right.
out.
That's
And
legit.
learning from the failures, fail fast, and all those
Which
analogies.
is William. He ended up at Wikiwachi
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
to find the mermaid.
Oh, there's a story there. We won't explore it now during the show, but there's definitely a story there. What's your take? Because you've again been doing this for a while. What's your take on hearing skills based, basically everything, because it goes all the way through HR, but skills based
Yep.
hiring? Like when that first started kicking off,
Yeah.
year and a half, 2 years ago, what'd you
Right.
think?
Yeah, I think it was a reaction from organizations post-COVID
Hmm.
to literally the smarter organizations taking the learnings from the biggest social experiment the world has ever seen, called COVID, of how we were able to work differently, in some cases more efficiently, more effectively, wrote down some of those myths of what working at home meant. No, it doesn't mean you're playing golf on a Friday necessarily. We can actually work in different places. And then it's got companies to think, well, actually, who'd have thought that we could have, in our instance at Legis, we have 15,000 employees online within 3 days working remote. We'd have never been able to do that unless we had to.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Right.
isn't
the
isn't
example
that
of that,
interesting?
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's that led to organizations saying, okay, now we're coming back in this post-COVID world. What we don't want to do is do what we did last time. There was a bit of a spike, throw bodies at things, and just hire
Right.
more and more people because we're getting cash through the door. And then the next cycle comes, and here we go again. We've got to lay people off, which is very painful. So it got companies truly thinking, perhaps there's a better way. How do we think differently about getting work done? And there's a direct correlation then to that. Start joining the dots of, well, what talent do we have within? If I'm going to start thinking differently, if I'm going to start sort of perhaps having stretch assignments for my people and really embrace internal mobility, I better be better than just going out to LinkedIn to see who works for us. What skills do we actually have inside? And that led itself to, oops, we better get a catalog and a way of understanding what
Tax
talent skills we have.
taxonomy.
And that led to
Right.
skills based.
What do we
Where
have
does
already within the organization?
Yeah.
yeah, and building some type of taxonomy to where you
Certainly the
understand.
driver for it. A number of our clients, they were saying that, they're in a hiring freeze. Now that we're coming out of it, actually, I want to stay in that hiring freeze a little bit longer to say before you run out and get a contractor or hire somebody, let's just see if we've got somebody inside. The phrase I use is stop giving all the sexy work to the big four.
Right. Where does AI? Because I see that wave. Fully, you've already articulated it really well. But where does AI and Gen AI play a role here? Because I also
Yeah.
feel like people got blindsided is probably not the right word, but paranoid about, okay, we don't have the right skills for the future.
Right.
So where in that experiment or after the experiment did do you see that coming in?
Yeah, there's a couple of spots. I think first is organizations that truly understand how they're getting work done. It's a lot harder than it sounds. That simple
Right.
phrase, how do you get work done?
Hmm.
Those organizations that are using deconstruction to break down the work into bite-sized tasks and then taking an automation approach first. AI obviously plays a big part in that. Stop getting your people to do the job of robots. So that's at the front end of it in its
Right.
purest form. The other reason where we're seeing great strides now is as a multiplier, really. Humans can do some of this matching of what skills do we need to be successful in that job, success profiles, we've had those forever. But how do you do that at scale? How do you take an organization that has 100,000 employees and actually start to understand what skills they have? You need technology to do that. Purely, nothing smart about it, it's a pure multiplier. We think about skills in three different ways. One is inferred, and that is if you have been doing this job for this many years, we can infer that you'll have these skills. The next is those validated skills. You might be certified to do, it might be education, it might be a qualification, a training course you've been on. And then the third one is self reported. So giving people the opportunity to go in to their profile and say, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm fluent in French. Take those three, and that gives you then that individual skill profile. The example we use is if you're hiring a nurse, it's okay for them to self-report they have good bedside manner. If they're a brain surgeon, you might want to see a certificate.
Right. Now, do either of those get weighted more heavy? I know they each have a critical role in putting that big picture together, but do you weight any of
Yeah, that's
those
a
over the
great,
other?
great question. Absolutely. And AI can help with that as well. By understanding the job profile and the work itself, then you can start playing around with which of those three are the most important and how much weight you give to those. And it's really as fascinating once you sort of take the covers off your eyes and start looking through a skills based lens instead of the old traditional way of you've got to have a job description and you've got to have a resume. Not the best way of matching people to work
Right.
necessarily.
Hmm.
I think one of our example, I'll give you one of our clients. They were struggling to find. They're in the beauty industry, and they wanted to find some marketing people. Must have beauty industry experience. Couldn't fill the job. Just couldn't find the people. We said, well, what about if they were just really passionate about beauty, and they'd been had some marketing skills?
Right.
They fought like mad. Fought like in the end. Okay, okay, we'll do it. We put 5 people in front of them. They wanted to hire them all. The one they hired was actually a school teacher assistant that had a real passion for beauty products and understood their particular brand as well, and was a massive, massive
Right.
fan and ambassador.
Yeah.
Lesson, you can teach skills, you can't teach passion.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Right. Now,
We
did
have another
they?
great example of a client that they're looking for project managers that are getting more and more scarce now. And again, open the eyes, just think differently. What are the skills you need to have to be a good project manager? They ended up hiring a wedding planner. Good project management skills, right? Now
Have
it
to
does
be.
mean you have to tweak the job description. In that case,
Right.
take out the fact they need this specific technology because they don't. You can teach that piece of it.
You could teach certain things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
On the example that you gave on the assistant, on the school teacher, did they take into, or did it work out this way in terms of the generation of the assistant? So they were looking for somebody in
yeah.
marketing. She was an assistant school teacher. I'm not sure she had background in marketing, but clearly she had a passion in beauty, and I'm assuming understands the landscape of what's happening in the
Yes.
marketplace today in order to reach people of certain demographics and age.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a social media skills in that instance were very,
Mm-hmm.
and it happened to be a younger person. Didn't need to be, but
Right.
it
Right.
was generally speaking they tend to be on screens more.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean, again, you can teach them marketing. You can teach with skills. A lot of those types of things, you can put them through courses. You can't teach passion.
Right.
You just can't teach them to be passionate. So the passion in that instance is more important. It's weighted more. It's like you want them to be really into the fashion industry or the
Yeah.
beauty industry.
Yeah.
Great. They're following all the influencers on Instagram. They're up to date on TikTok. Like they get it. They get what's
Yeah.
going on. They get some of the trends, etc. Okay, now teach them about marketing.
Yeah.
All right. The
And by
question
the
I have.
way,
Yeah,
as
go
an
ahead.
aside, they tend to be a lower cost than somebody that has the experience.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because they want to be in their passion.
Exactly.
They'll take less
Giving a
money.
chance. Yep.
That's an altogether different economic deal because
Yeah.
the people that have acquired the skills of marketing through the years, they get to a certain pay grade, and whether or
Yeah,
not
they're
they have the
cost out.
passion or not, right? They might have the passion for marketing, which is
Right.
totally cool.
Yeah.
But um,
Another way we're
be,
using AI is to actually help with the deconstruction. So to
right,
take the description of work as opposed to the job description, that's massively different.
yeah,
What is the work we're trying to get done? What skills are then required to be successful in that role? And in the algorithms that we use, a Java developer, there are 14 skills that you need to be a good Java developer. Five of those skills you'll also see in a business analyst. So now it gets you thinking, actually, if we took the tasks that Java developer was doing that needed those five skills out of that job and gave them to a business analyst, I've now got 30 times more people in my talent pool and half the cost. So
oh,
the
that's fantastic.
deconstruction is really, really important when you start thinking about this. We ran a good old time and motion study for one of our clients on the West Coast around developers, app developers, because they were getting more and more expensive and more and more scarce.
Mm.
And the average amount of time their employee base that had an app developer role was developing apps was 75%. Now, that's sort of okay. That's not bad. We've seen a lot worse in other industries. But that does mean that you're paying them for 25% of their time, you're overpaying them for what they're doing.
Right,
And if you hire
right,
an app developer, guess what you want them doing? You want them developing apps. So how do we
all day, every
redesign the
day.
job
Yeah.
now and take that away from them? So there's a lot of that going on.
Was that just meetings and other like stuff,
Yeah,
business
yeah,
inertia?
it was. And the best example we have is a very large client that hire thousands and thousands of nurses, literally many, many thousands of nurses. And we all know there's a global shortage of nurses. So they're struggling to keep hiring. And so same thing. We did the good old fashioned time and motion study. Their most common skill set or job was a senior care manager. 30% of the time they were nursing. 70% of the time they're doing other stuff. And which we didn't even look for, but then it hit us in the face. The number one reason for attrition was in the 70%, not the 30%.
You're kidding.
In the 70% of the time, they were not doing
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you
In other
hired them to
words,
do.
hey, I went to college because I wanted to go after people, and now
Yeah,
you got me doing this other BS. 70% of
yeah.
my time.
Right,
I
right.
got 2 hour
Right.
meetings
Yeah,
every day.
scheduling,
Yeah,
meet and greet patients. You don't need to be a nurse for that. Taking temperatures, all those sorts of things, and
Right.
right.
take that away from them. And now they won't. They'll never get to 100%. But even if you got it to 60%, now you need half the nurses you thought you needed.
Right.
That's
And
really fascinating.
and
Yeah.
they're doing the things that they want to do. So
Yeah.
you've been through the whole wave about 20 years ago, 15 years ago of competency models.
Yep.
And where companies kind of fell in love with
Yep.
competencies models. People didn't really hire to them, they didn't really promote to them, and they didn't really fire them. Some companies, they had them
Yep.
and used them in
Yep.
some ways. What's the similarity or difference in what you see now with this kind of skills-based kind of revolution?
Yeah, I mean, Nirvana is you do both. It doesn't replace, it's an addition to. I think
Right,
there's still a massive value in situational questioning for competencies.
right,
I wish more organizations use them rigorously. It tends to be a trend. Some like HR get excited about it, roll it out, and then
right.
Hmm.
6 months later,
It's
the
done.
manager's like, yeah, it's okay. I've got a good feeling about this person. They go, remind me of when I was his age. Let's
Yeah,
hire.
No better way to hire than
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly. But I do think, and I think there is some evidence out there now that assessments are getting their time back in the sun again.
yeah.
Because if you're going to hire not purely on experience, you're going to hire on skills, then you need to be able to assess for those skills.
right.
So I know, like Savile and Holzer, for example, Savile is assessment, as they're now called. They've just launched a project around skills based. So I think we'll see companies like that having a bit of a resurgence.
Well, and with the technology now, you're able to act on
Yeah,
what the assessment is telling you, where before, You're just kind of looking at a graph.
Yeah, and should be able to do the assessments now, penny on the dollar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when
Right.
I first started, it was probably £300 or something to do an
Oh yeah.
assessment.
Oh yeah. Super expensive.
Yeah,
Super,
you
super
sit down with a
expensive.
psychologist for 2 hours, fill a form in.
Yeah, no, I can remember. It's funny you say that. So way back, I worked with Connexa and we did assessments, and I remember we brought in. I say we, the Connexa brought in. We had about 100 IO psychiatrists who did the actual interviews with the
Oh yeah.
people. Like
Yeah,
it was a phone assessment, and then they wrote their judgment or whatever they called it, their assessment, and they then gave that into the portfolio team, who in turn went to the client.
yeah,
The amount of money that cost was insane, but it was actually a novelty because well, you're gonna have an IO psychologist do the
yeah,
assessment. Like, what better way is there to do that?
right.
Obviously, there's a much better way
Then
now.
then for them to use their biases in hiring.
Yeah. They use their
Hey,
biases in
then we've got to
hiring.
say,
I
So
don't
where
get that type of treatment here.
do
there's
you
a
see
mermaid in
do you see simulations or VR or any of that type of stuff? Do you see that working with skills based?
We haven't yet.
Yeah.
I think some companies have used it as a bit of a, employer branding type gig. McDonald's did some cool stuff with that a while ago,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't think it's real yet.
It's not
Not yet.
ready.
Yeah.
No, no. But another, just thinking about assessing, there's also the ability now, because of the amount of data we have, to look at pure metrics to understand success. And I'll give you an example on, and this is, with things like LinkedIn, you can track where people have come from to which organizations and where they've gone when they've left.
Right.
All of that. And a very, very large global software company we were working with, and we started doing some analysis of their sales force, and we found out that if they hired salespeople from this one particular competitor that had more than 4 years experience at that competitor, they failed in the first year. If they hired
Wow.
somebody for the same competitor with less than, I think it was 18 months experience, they were the superstars, top of the table. So I presented this to the global national sales director, and he was
Yeah.
just fascinated by it. And he's like, "Oh, what's causing that?" I'm like, "I don't know, and I don't care. Just
No.
stop doing this and do
Just
this."
Who cares? Yeah, that's interesting. I maybe they were jaded. They went too far into the company. Yeah, that's
Probably too much of that. Well, how we did it there.
that's exactly
Fine.
right.
and they bring it over, and you can't
Yeah, yeah.
untrain
But then
everybody.
that's just one example of, the data that we have now at our fingertips to understand that stuff. There's sort of no excuse for getting it wrong, really.
Right.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
every staffing company on the planet, we're no different. We know when to make a call to a certain individual that's been at a certain company for how long. When their peak of interest of making a move is, and you can track that by demographic, by skill set, by company, by geography.
Right.
So all that. That's We have the ability, and I truly believe that technology has overtaken the human capacity to fully utilize it. I truly
Right.
believe that we've got to catch up.
Do
What do you
we
think
get to a
about?
point?
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What do you think about the folks that want to hire for potentiality? Not the skills that they see, but the skills that they believe
Yeah,
that
I
are
think if you have the ability to assess that, I think that's okay. I think that, you know, our large staffing companies, we hire thousands of people out of college every year,
right.
and we're certainly not hiring them on their experience. There's are they, they're good team players or are they
Yeah. Yeah.
self-motivated and all that sort of stuff. But really, you're trying to hire them against their potential,
Right.
which used to be potential to pick the phone up. Now it's probably
Yeah.
Do you do you have the potential to call people
Yeah.
and
Can you
face
breathe?
rejection
Yeah.
98% of the time?
Do we ever get to a point of we'll go back to your example of the salesperson. 18 months they were successful.
yeah.
4 years, don't touch them. Do we
Yeah.
ever get to a point where they're, and maybe not from employer to employer, competitor to competitor, but maybe in your situation or a staffing, kind of like a staffing situation, where there's a shared pool of candidates because you know so much about these people, you can say to client A, look, these guys, these people are good, but at the 24 months range, we're going to expect about a 60% attrition rate. we're going to assess for that. And then we're going to take these people that we find and we're going to move them into this company. But then you're going to go and you're going to be
Right.
able to pull from these pools of companies. Is there a
Yeah.
potential for that?
I like the concept. No, we're not doing anything like that. But I like the concept. I think, unfortunately, most organizations they want to take and not give to those.
Yeah, they don't trust. Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's also internal mobility.
Yeah,
It's having the data, and
that's right.
it's being able to
Yeah.
interpret the data and then do something with it.
Yeah,
And that's a lot of moving parts that
Yeah.
companies haven't historically been great at. I
Yeah.
and what
did.
causes quite a bit of that is, and I'll state this as a fact, even if it isn't. I'm going to say this is a fact because I like it. In most organizations, it is harder to apply for a job in your own company than it is elsewhere.
Oh, 100%. Oh, it's
Yeah.
insane.
Mostly
Yeah,
because you
It,
don't know what to do or where to go. And there's no way to
and
assess.
you
Yeah.
have to ask your
Yeah.
boss permission. It just
people
gets too
ask
hard, so they go to a competitor. I mean, it's
people ask me all the time, who does internal mobility well? I'm like, if
Mm.
you find them, tell me. Because
Yeah.
I mean, even the one, if someone's doing internal mobility, let's say pick a company, Black and Decker. You pick a company and says, okay, they're doing it really well. They're not going to tell you that they're doing it really well.
right,
They're not going to be out on conference circuit writing books and stuff
right.
like that because that's their secret sauce.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, I happen to be in a company that we have amazing tenure at Allegis. It's just so unique for the industry. I'm 14 years in. I'm still the new boy, you know.
Right,
Um,
right,
and most of my colleagues, we go on a pitch and they're like 28 years, 30 years, 25 years. It's amazing. So we passionately believe in internal mobility, but we can because we have amazing tenure. That is
right.
not the norm, particularly in
No,
our industry. It is not the norm. So it's very, very hard to even think about internal mobility because people are only there a couple of years, right?
I think a lot of that plays to leadership and the organization. If I come to my manager, Bruce, in your example, and say, "Hey, I'm interested in this role," there's in a lot of ways, and using my daughter as an example, she wants to do another job within her company. She's young, she's 16, but she's afraid. She's afraid to ask because if her manager says no, they're going to think she doesn't like the role. And
Yeah.
this is what she's battling right now. And we're talking like, come on, it's a hostess versus a waitress. Like
but
you're not
still,
gonna
that fear is real.
the
So relevant.
fear. Yeah, it's real. And so how do we get past that?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's definitely a cultural thing that making it
Yeah,
okay and
Yeah,
almost saying, hey, if you don't, that's going to look
safe.
bad against you, right? We want you
Yeah,
to be asking for different
yeah,
positions, sort
yeah.
of
You
better
create
reverse psychology on it.
safe environment, and there's no
Yeah,
retaliation or any of that type of stuff. So it's values and culture
right.
and the ability to then communicate where other people have been successful.
yeah,
Here was
yeah,
a person that was a bartender that wanted to be blah blah blah, a manager. Okay, well, here's that success story. They tell that success story internally,
Right.
and then it allows people to understand there's a safe environment. There's people that care about us on our promotion track,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. They could easily go to another restaurant. Your daughter can. She could
Yeah.
easily go to another restaurant and get that position.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
everybody's hiring.
sure.
Say,
And by the way, Ryan, well done on your daughter and well done on you. I have 7 children, and every one of them have worked in service.
No.
Passionately believe that every
I
child
don't think after this
should spend some
experience,
time working in service.
yeah, I'm
so
not sure she's staying.
But it doesn't
I'm on,
matter. She doesn't have to stay. The fact that
no,
she's experienced it, she
Yeah.
will be a better customer going forward.
Yes.
I'm
I
on the
agree.
other end of the spectrum. Neither of my boys have worked a day in their life. So, so again, we'll see how the experiment plays out over the
Yeah.
long term. We'll do the longitudinal
Yeah.
study.
Well, I can tell you when we go to a restaurant, 20% is not enough to tip. She is very
Really?
firm about that. Oh yeah. She's just
Okay.
like, you don't know what they do in the
There you
back.
go. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I bet she
Yeah.
stacks all your plates up as well, ready
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. They're not just bringing your food. They're doing this. I understand, honey.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. I factored that in when I put the 20%
Yeah.
down. So one of the questions that just came up as it relates, have you done this analysis for Allegis in
Yes.
terms of who you should hire and the breakpoints and all that other stuff, like skills that are
Yeah.
important now and all that stuff?
Yeah,
You- and
I'm
whatever you can talk about, because that's
we're going
internal stuff.
across the organization function by function, but we started in IT
Right.
because our CIO was really passionate about this, and he wanted to go first, so to speak. And I'm slightly oversharing, but I'm not giving any secrets here, so I don't mind telling you that as we did the analysis across just at Allegis Global Solutions, not Allegis Group, but just in the managed service business, we had 150 people that were in IT in some form. It said it in their job spec, but they were distributed around the organization. The largest team we had was five. Thought, okay, well, taught us something straight away. There's not much progression career wise there.
Hmm.
So let's blow the whole thing up and start again and come at it from a work perspective, not a talent perspective.
Right.
So we held this in Phoenix. We had a 3-day workshop. We got 12 people out of the IT function, flew in for 3 days. And I said, right, what we want to capture is what is the work that we get done as an organization that we need to get done. I know, capture that work, and then we're going to come back to it. Many, many times through the first couple of days, people fell in the trap of using the job description, not the work.
Right.
Oh, yeah, we need a project manager. We need to manage the project. Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. Oh, we need a solutions architect. No, we need somebody that architects solutions or the ability, because it might not be a person, to
Right.
architect a solution. So what we learned in that exercise is actually when you go through this, if you get stuck, just reverse the job title. Instead of project manager, you got to manage
Mm-hmm.
project. Anyway, we did this. A lot of fun with it. Redesigned the whole thing. The upshot is we invested in a dev center in Bangalore, which we've got a dozen people in, which will grow and grow and grow. Everybody in the IT organization is now in a better position, and we increased productivity by 100% in 3 months. In 3 months, it was mind blowing how inefficient we were before we did
Wow.
this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I'm not sure what's better, that you solved it or that you were so bad for so long.
Well, we use something like to get
that's a
smarter.
good point.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and the biggest upside is actually it's increased the speed we can now develop our own platform,
Right.
intelligent
Right.
workforce platform that we're building.
Right.
So massive, massive success, and the people's jobs are much better, more exciting. We've just finished in our marketing function. We now use far more freelancers in that function for
Mm.
digital creation, all that sort of thing. We're eating our own dog food, as they say, or drinking our own champagne. But just incredible results. But literally, just by thinking about the work instead of the job description, you've got to start
Right.
with the work. As a good friend of mine, John Boudreau, when he wrote the book "Lead the
Yeah.
Work" all those years ago, he was absolutely right. And one of the biggest challenges we have, I think, in organizations is no managers are being taught how to lead the work. They've been
Right.
taught perhaps how to lead the people, but do they
Perhaps.
really understand how they
Mm-hmm.
can sit down with the project? And we call that the workforce business partner role, where they act like almost like a quantity surveyor. Quantity surveyor will
Right.
look at a blueprint picture of a house, and they'll tell you how many bricks you need, how much cement, how much glass, how much wiring, the order how to do these jobs, how much it will cost, and how long it will take. That's what we need inside organizations. That's what we call the workforce business partner. That somebody can go to them and say, "This is the big project I'm trying to get done next year. Okay, let's break it all down and then come back with a work design and org design approach to that. What can be automated? What can be
Right.
offshored? What can we bundle up and give it to a service provider? What can we use contractors for? Very last thing, okay, it looks like we're gonna have to hire a couple of people.
Right, right. So if you could, I
Without
don't know
that,
if
you
you
just don't hire people.
now
Right.
I don't know if you can, but if you could, how many, if you could put a number to it, how many work points or jobs, I'm not sure really how to describe that, jobs or work points that your current team was working on, did you remove from that process by doing this or
Great
bring outside the organization?
An intelligent guess would be 30% when a
They were just doing stuff because they were used
Yeah,
to
yeah.
or accustomed to doing stuff.
Yeah, those
yeah.
reports that nobody looks at, they're like, what?
GPS.
How do you
Yeah.
do those? Oh, you just send them to me? I thought you send them to other people as well, because I don't look at them.
No. Yeah.
But instead of
Th-
that,
That's
They're
I've
just sitting in
actually
your
seen that in
inbox.
I've seen that from sales actually. Marketing sends them spreadsheets from a conference of
yeah,
like all the leads. They just
Mm,
delete them
yeah,
because they assume that other people were getting them as
right,
well, or they're
yeah,
in the system. It's like okay.
yeah.
Um,
So as across our organization, We partnered with UiPath to
Hmm.
do all of our automation stuff, and we've automated 12 million actions now last year that
Wow.
people used to be doing. And not only that, when you go through the process of actually drawing out those workflows of what happens, when we're trying to chase timesheets in a VMS, or, for example, all the different points, you start realizing that some of them could be, you don't need to automate them, you just cross them out. So just even if you didn't automate, there's still massive value in just going through the process as if you were going to. Right?
Right.
Mm.
That in itself saves money and increases efficiency.
What's your take on when you hear people talk about upskilling and reskilling and all the other ways that you can say skill?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think we need it as a society. If you look at this skills mismatch now, we don't have it's not that we haven't got enough people, we just haven't got the right people for the right jobs. In some cases, people are overeducated and they don't want the blue collar jobs. And in other cases, our immigration policies and everything else, just not go down that path. But it's just a mismatch of what's going on at the moment. So we need to upskill and reskill people. And we have a company that we own called Career Circle that does that predominantly around bringing women back to work or the underprivileged. So we
Right.
have a deal with Google and Salesforce. We train these people to be Salesforce administrators and thousands of them. So I think that's a really, really good societal thing that's happening right now, and it's very real.
All right. So this might be too broad of a question,
Yeah,
but when we initially started talking, we were talking about AI changing skills-based
yeah,
recruitment. So I know we can't solve this problem in a call or a question, but how does an organization who's stuck in recruiting from 2005, how
right,
do they begin that process? What do they need to look at?
yeah. The approach would be to start with the work, not the jobs. Think about what work does that function do, capture that work, then break down that work into tasks, and then task by task saying, can this be fully automated? Can it be augmented with AI? So in other words, a human's still doing it, but they're using AI to be more efficient, or is it a purely human job? And then if you look at an old job description, you can then start pulling those pieces out and putting them in those relevant buckets. And that will give you then a guide to deconstruction. But literally, you need, unless you're using a tech platform, if you're doing that manually, you've got to go through, 1,000 job specs.
Right.
That's why you need to put some technology behind it because the tech is out there and there are plenty of technologies out there. We created our own, but there are plenty out there that can do that now. Do that deconstruction for you. And that's the really good starting point. But the part of that is, and where we're probably using AI more than anywhere else. And we don't use it in selection, by the way. We've taken a stance. We deliberately don't select candidates with technology because
Right.
the bias and everything else. We've put that in the too risky, too hard bucket. We use AI everywhere else. But our biggest use right now is to help organizations understand how to distribute the work. Because when that I touched on it earlier, there's a big project need doing. Once you've broken that down, you can then start to make a decision on, am I better to do this with employees? Have I really got the skill set internally? Do I bring a bunch of contractors in that I'm going to have to manage against a time frame and hopefully it gets done on time? Or do I bundle it up, put a price ticket on it and bid it out to the market? And if you think about that difference, and so let's say it's a piece of, I don't know, API integration or something, and you say, okay, I think 6 contractors for this period of time, that'll cost me $1 million if I can manage them, direct them, and everything else. Or I could give it to this IT services company, they want 1.2 million, guaranteed to deliver on this time with penalties. Now, as a manager now, of the leader, well, I can make a decision on that 200,000 delta. Is it really important to save that money and therefore I'm going to do it myself and take the risk? Or do I want to get it off my books, give it to that organization who are proven, etc., and pay the extra 200,000? We're now in a world where we can actually put that data at the manager's fingertips to make the decision. We haven't been there before. So that AI is incredibly, incredibly powerful to do that and to actually understand the best channel to put this work down. And then we're partnering, from a pure tech play, we partner with Globality, where that platform actually helps the manager write the scope of work, like ChatGPT type experience. You start writing
Hmm.
it and it's filling it in for you, putting all of your legal and regulations already compliance already built in. You could build an SOW in 30 minutes on that platform instead of the average of 6 or 7 days. Send it out to those providers that the technology is finding in your supply chain of who's done this before, who's got the best track record. Do a like by like comparison on the platform and then choose, boom, negotiate with the contractor.
So as you're
It's
doing it,
phenomenal.
as you're sending it,
Yeah, it's
you're not
literally,
wasting your time.
yeah, literally changing the world of procurement because now organizations can manage all of that tail spend because he doesn't take the time. That's why organizations, oh, anything below 500,000 we don't, tail spend. Well, now you can actually bid that, and when you bid, you're now, according to SIPs, you say 14%. We think it's more like 20% just by competitively bidding instead of giving it to that same provider every time. So that's where AI is truly transforming the work world as we see it.
My favorite takeaway so far is getting people to stop thinking about the job description and the description of work.
Yeah,
Like that's, if anything, for the audience, I mean, they're going to learn a lot, but for just that mentality, the
Yeah.
shift of
yeah.
like, especially the way that we've created job descriptions in the past of cut and copy. Uh,
Our industry has been responsible for it. When you're right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Must have a minimum of 6 to 7 years. And I always said to people, hang on a minute, you can't have a minimum of 6 or 7. The minimum is 6. Why are you
right.
saying or 7?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
7. Yeah.
We,
Yeah, yeah.
we
Or
work
Pick
or
one.
when there's a new when I
right.
remember when some the as from a tech recruiting days, 5 years in this specific, like it just is
Technology hasn't been around for
brand
that
new,
long.
like 12 months. Like
Well,
you have
I
skills.
guarantee we could go on any job board right now and find a Gen AI prompt
Yep.
engineer
Hmm.
and that has 10 years of experience.
That's right. Yes.
And
Well,
well, we talked to Brian, you brought up unicorns. There
Yeah.
you go. Those
Yep.
unicorns
unicorns are
might
there.
exist
Yep.
on
I,
those job
actually,
boards.
I think there's prompt engine, and this is getting into philosophical in your world, William. But there are people that I talk to that I know you're probably one of them, to be honest, that you can prompt people to do things and say things they didn't really think they were going to or want to actually say. It's the 10 years of experience that people need in prompt engineering right now.
That's humanities
Right.
degrees is what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Bruce, interested. The last question for me is I'm interested to get your thought on technology's role in making the hire. So I know you said
Yep.
Yeah,
Allegis
you're
does
not doing
not
screening.
Yep.
intervene at that point. I
Yep.
know some technologies do, but they don't view themselves as actually making a decision, but they are influencing, in my opinion, I should say, the
Is
decision.
stack ranking. These are the 5 candidates you
Yeah.
should look
Stack
at.
ranking versus
Right.
shortlisting. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. You're kind of telling me don't look at the rest of the 300, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think that the answer is the human element. I mean, you know, it, there are things you can use the technology for to make it easier so you're not looking at such a big list. You can start with a smaller list by using the technology to do the clever stuff like, there's free text of show me all the engineers that are within a 15-minute commute of Google's headquarters. There you go, there's 20 of them.
Right.
Let's use technology. So now you only have to look at 20, not trying to work out
Right.
how long does it take if you live here versus there. So there's different ways AI can help recruiters now.
Hmm.
It might be that, show me all the people that have come through the engineering background to get into this type of role. That
Right.
free text search now is now, very, very available on most databases, ATSs. So I think that it's certainly making a massive difference to our recruitment delivery centers that we have, all over the world. Thousands of people that are doing that top of the funnel type stuff, getting it down to the shortlist that they can then pass to a recruiter. But they're using it top of the funnel, not bottom of the funnel, I guess is the short
Right.
answer.
So, does your team get asked a lot about augmentation versus automation?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that
yeah.
seems to be a theme that's
Yeah, yeah. My father-in-law, who's in his 80s, said to me recently, he said, "Are you using any of that A1 stuff?"
Yeah. On every steak that I eat.
absolutely that.
So we now use that term internally, and we're sort of
Anyway,
inheriting it for augmentation. So it's AI, or
It,
it's A1 if it's augmentation.
that's pretty
that's
funny.
oh, that's genius. Last thing for me is when you were talking about skills being, we have some of the skills, but like in the example of the person that's got degrees but doesn't want to take a blue collar job. I had a guy, this is 100 years ago, but he said, we don't, in global, we don't have a hunger problem. We have a logistics problem.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We make enough food worldwide. It's just not in the right spots. So again, I don't know if he was right or wrong on that, but it did make me think. Do you think do we have that in skills
We
that we don't?
absolutely do, and it's you've touched on a soapbox of mine, so I'll keep it short.
No, 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 no.
I've
Roll
been
on,
I've been
roll.
writing for 10 years now that Africa is the next frontier, and it will be.
Yeah,
But it needs to do it in my lifetime. They need to get on with it. But we've got two of the top 20 universities in the world now in Africa. It's starting to happen. You've seen the massive investment Microsoft have just made.
yep,
They're starting to put billions and billions of dollars into Africa. So, but the answer will be we've got to find the way to send the work to Africa, not try and get Africa, not those people in here. And
right,
we're now living in a world where we can send the work to people. We don't have to send the people to work. So
right.
it'll definitely happen. And by the end of this decade, a third of the world's working population will be living in Africa.
Which will
So if
help
we're
so
not
many
sending work there,
things.
what the heck are we doing?
Right.
Look, you've seen the GCC growth in India now with it's phenomenal what's happening.
Right.
And because outsource, I call it outsourcing 2.0 because back in Y2K when we all thought the world was going to end and we send all that work to India to add the two extra zeros, so
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Y2K. But then it just became a back office thing. So
That's
Wipro,
right.
the Tatas, I don't care.
Call centers,
I don't
whatever.
care outsourcing my back office. This is now front office R&D, high end AI that's being built in India. And to do that, companies don't want to outsource it, so they're building their own in partnership with companies, and we do a lot of that, obviously, to build those teams that are like quasi offshore, but actually owned by the organization. This thing now called two box leadership, which is building a global headquarters in India as well as the US.
Right.
And you watch the leaders now. I mean, there's already very very large technology companies who have an Indian leadership.
Oh, 100%.
And
Which
that is
is
Yeah.
going to continue to grow. And I think
I've
that can only be
noticed. Yep.
good for the world. It's certainly helping India get out of poverty. But, the long shot will be we've got to find ways to fix that.
in
It's just in the
Africa.
wrong place problem. We've got to be
Yeah.
able to send the work, package it up, and send it around the world much more easy.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question because it's it's been perplexing for me, but you
Yeah.
just made it really easy. So, Bruce, Ryan, and thank you very much for your time. This has
Thank
been
you, guys. It's
wonderful.
been great chatting with you.
Absolutely. And thanks for the audience. What do we say, Ryan? Subscribe and
Love us everywhere.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Do that.
Yeah, and we will be travel. We'll be out at a lot of places coming up, especially in September, October. So, if you see
Come
us,
see us.
come say hello.